Hello YouTube, my name is Billy and welcome back to my kitchen. Tonight we're going to be making an Italian seafood bake and some bacon cheddar biscuits. I want to wish everyone a happy holidays. We just came back from a wonderful East Texas holiday weekend with my in-laws, and I'm so grateful that we got to spend time with them and see everyone. And tomorrow for Christmas Day, we'll be going to here locally to spend some time with my family. But tonight we're going to have an intimate dinner for two, and we're going to do Italian seafood bake and some homemade cheddar bacon biscuits. So we're going to get started and get the biscuits done first. And I've already cooked 2 pieces of bacon and just until they're pretty crisp, and laid those out on a paper towel. And now I'm going to take 1 pretty good sized clove of garlic. I have a lot going on the counter, so pardon the mess. All right, we're just going to kind of mince that up pretty well. And that's about right. And I'm just gonna put that in a bowl, set that aside. And then I'm gonna grab our bacon, and we're just gonna chop that up. Now for these biscuits, you could also add a little bit of onion if you like that. I'm not gonna do that tonight. And you could also do a jalapeno. You just slice it down the middle and take out the seeds, and then just chop it up and just dump that in your biscuit dough. And those are really good too. Let me rinse my hands real quick. Okay, now for the biscuit dough, it's very similar, or exactly like making drop biscuits. Very quick and easy. 10 to 15 minutes, you have a perfect homemade biscuit. We're going to take 2 cups of all-purpose flour. You want a pretty large bowl. All right, you're gonna want some baking powder, a tablespoon of that. Okay, to cut through a little bit of the bitterness of the baking powder, we're just gonna do 1 teaspoon or I'm sorry, 1 tablespoon of sugar. It doesn't make them sweet, it just cuts through the bitterness. All right, you want about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You want 1 stick of melted butter. Now before I do that, I'm gonna show you a little trick. If you've never made homemade biscuits before, whether it's regular biscuits or drop biscuits, the dough is incredibly sticky. So do yourself a favor. it doesn't matter what kind of spoon you have. Rub a little bit. You could do olive oil or some vegetable oil, or I just take the butter and I just use my fingers and just coat that spoon really well. Because the biscuit dough is going to be incredibly sticky, and it's still going to stick, but not as much, and it'll make your life a lot easier. You want to coat it pretty well, and that's good. You don't need a lot, but you really want to coat your spoon because it's incredibly sticky. Okay, we're going to dump that in. That's one stick of melted butter. And we're going to go ahead and dump our garlic in there. The bacon. And you want 1 cup of milk. You're just going to dump everything together in the bowl. Okay, now you're going to just start working this together. And you don't want to overwork it. You just want to gently kind of toss it around until everything is incorporated really well. Until it's just a nice little dough. You just want to gently work it all together. You can fold it. And don't forget to scrape the sides of your bowl and get all of that in there. And you just want to work that together. You can see how sticky the dough is because even with the butter on the spoon, it sticks. But if you coat your spoon, it really makes a huge difference. It will go so much easier. Now we're actually going to add some cheese to this as well. And I went ahead and grated my own cheese just because the block cheese that you get and grate yourself is a lot better. All right, I'm going to do 1 good handful. That's going to be about 1 cup. Okay, and we're just going to continue to work that. Very, very sticky, but they're good. Okay, that's really good. We want to stop there. If you overwork your biscuit dough, they'll come out tough, and you don't want that. You want a nice, fluffy, soft biscuit. Okay, now over here, I have a pretty good size cast iron skillet. And I've just greased that with butter. And you're going to take your spoon and just get a nice little amount. And just kind of work it gently into a bowl. And you're just going to do that until you use up all your dough. Don't be afraid of giving your biscuits a lot of room because biscuits actually rise better when they're touching. So it's okay if there's, now that's 5, but if you made smaller ones, you could probably get, I don't know, 10, 8 or 10. Okay, and we're gonna let that set aside for just a minute. You can stop. Okay, now that we have our bacon cheddar biscuits done and ready to go in the oven, we are going to go ahead and start our seafood Italian bake. And that's gonna be really easy. You're gonna need a pretty large pot, and you're gonna wanna take 2 cups of either seafood broth or fish stock, whichever one you can get a hold of. 2 cups. Okay, and you're also gonna want 2 cups of heavy cream. Just pour that right in. And you're gonna want 1 cup of a really good white wine. Chardonnay is best. And then dump that in. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and take this over to the stove. About medium-high heat. You want it to come to a boil. All right, now while that's going, we're going to prepare our vegetables. And I have 1 squash and 1 zucchini, and I'm just gonna peel that really quickly and then just slice that up. I never throw away my grocery sacks because when I'm cooking, you'll notice I always have one in the kitchen sink, and everything I do when I'm done with the package or container, it goes right into the sack. It also works really great when you're peeling potatoes or any other vegetable that needs to be peeled. It makes cleanup a lot easier. Okay, once I have those peeled, I'm just gonna chop the ends off. And then we're just gonna slice those up. And that's however you like. Okay, we're just gonna toss all that to the side. Because now, while that our broth is getting heated up, I'm going to start getting our fish ready. Now this package right here is Chilean sea bass. This is not a cheap fish, but for this dish, you don't need very much. You just want to get a nice thin strip, not like that. And then you're going to cut, well, the skin will go 1-inch sections. Chilean sea bass has got to be one of my all-time favorites. But it is kind of a treat because it is very expensive. I don't know how expensive it is other places, but I go to a really nice place to get mine. And it's about $30 a pound, so that's, to me, that's quite expensive, but it's a very good cut of fish. Now, if it was just me, I would probably leave the skin on. It has an amazing flavor, but again, picky eaters. Stop. Okay, now, my second batch of seafood is going to be this is a pound of raw Argentinian shrimp, and I'm going to, those are still a little frozen, but that's a very quick and easy fix. I'm going to pour these into just a glass bowl. These are raw, they are not cooked. But luckily, they only take 3 minutes to cook. You want to put those in some cool water. Do not use hot water. It'll only take about a minute or two for those to defrost. Okay, now I have right here in this package is 4 lobster tails. Now I know how long this little dish can take to make, so I made it a little simpler, and I had my the lady at the fish counter, she went ahead and cooked these for me. She steamed them for 8 minutes and they're perfect, and she even did me the wonderful favor of cracking them or butterflying them for me, and that right there can save a lot of time. And we're just gonna peel the meat out. Okay, and then I'm gonna cut that in half and then cut those. These are pretty small. If you had a larger lobster, you could probably get away with 2 tails, but these little guys are pretty small, so 4. You want about a pound of each of your meats. And this dish, you can be really versatile. You could use other fishes. Instead of the sea bass, you could use halibut. It's been kind of hard for me to find the halibut. So the last 2 times I've made this dish, or there's this dish and then there's a similar one I also make called seafood au gratin. I just haven't been able to find the halibut, but that's okay because I love the sea bass. It's wonderful. It's one of my favorites. All right, we're just gonna cut that. That one's a little bigger, so you just want like 1-inch strips. I'm really glad I had this done for me. Lobster does not actually take that long to cook. In fact, I have 2 videos. If you want to see how I cook my lobster tails, I have 2 videos on that. You can check those out. You have to be really careful when you're taking the meat out, because if you're not, it can just really tear apart. These shells are quite tough and kind of sharp. My little bag is getting full. Rinse my little cutting board off. Okay, now for this giant package here, I have some very large king crab. And again, I went ahead and had my wonderful people at the seafood place go ahead and cook these for me. And that will, again, will save me some time. Now, if you do not have a little cracker or the little thing that you just zip right through, that's okay. Get a fork. And you are going to just break. If you break it off, and if they're done well, they come right out. Okay, we're gonna lay that aside. That one's empty. If you're not used to working with these giant crab, these little spiny things are really sharp, so be careful. And you want to get all that meat right out. Just pull it right in there. In fact, I'm going to leave these crab pieces a little larger because we love crab. We like seafood, period. Now, I am not a picky eater, and some of my favorite foods on the planet are fish, or not just fish, anything that comes from the water. I love it. I love any kind of fish or seafood, any kind of way. I'm not big on fried stuff when it comes to fish or any kind of seafood. I like the flavor of the whatever it is that came from the water. You can tell I've done this quite a lot. I make it look really easy, but it wasn't always easy in the beginning. When you're new to seafood, especially crab, you can really embarrass yourself, especially in public. I don't really like, when you go to a seafood restaurant and they hand you that little plastic yellow thing, I hate those things. And the reason I hate those things and why I've started using a fork is because those little plastic things have been known to slip, and they've also been known to jab me in the hands. And that is incredibly painful. So I don't use those anymore. I just use a fork. The fork is not going to break. Well, it shouldn't. And it's does the job so much nicer and easier. I'm just going to peel that out. And if you have some that are stuck, you can use the end of your fork and just pop it right out. And don't forget to pull the meat off this little membrane. You don't want to eat that. Now, I like to rip these little empty carcasses off because down here, there is a lot of really good white meat inside of this right here. And that is your really good sweet meat. You just peel that shell back, and this is actually really easy. And you just peel it out, and it's gonna come apart. It's very tender, but that's okay. Just make sure you don't get the shell. You don't want to eat the shell. And you just, if you have trouble, just crack it, and then just, well, that worked out better, but maybe we won't have such good luck on the next one, and I'll show you what I was about to say. All right, and then you just peel it off, all that little crunchy shell. And just kind of, oh, you don't want that. You just want the really tender white meat out of there. And that, you don't want that. Or that. You have to really, when you're working with seafood, you really have to inspect quite well. When you're cracking open a crab or a lobster, if it's already cooked, even when you go out to eat, you look at your fish before you eat it. Fish can make you very, very sick. When if you're going, this is already cooked, so this is the way you would also get it at a restaurant. If that meat is not pink and white, like that, if it's brown or has any kind of funny odor, do not eat it. Send it back. Seafood is wonderful, but if it's not prepared properly, it can make you very sick. There's some of that good tender white meat up by the body. That's really good meat. I see a lot of people when I go to a restaurant, especially seafood restaurants, they miss a lot of the meat. There's really good meat in the claws and right next to the body, which is what I'm peeling out here. This meat is so good, it is so sweet. You don't even need butter or anything with it. It is so good. There we go. If you get to a piece, this is what I was going to show you earlier. You get a piece that's hard to get out. You just open it up and then just take your finger or thumb, whatever you can fit in there, and just push it right out. Don't waste any of your crab because that's not a cheap thing to work with, especially the larger ones. I like the larger king and queen crab the most because the meat is a lot sweeter. Your these come, your larger crabs, your king and queen, come from cold water. Pull my sleeve up. Your little Dungeness crabs, they tend to come from warmer climates like the Gulf, and they are good. Like I said, when it comes to food or fish or anything from the water, I love it. But your smaller Dungeness crabs come from warmer water, and like the Gulf or whatever. And they just have a different flavor. The meat is not as sweet, and there's not as much of it. I mean, they're certainly much cheaper than your king and your queen, but if you're making a meal of it, you really want the larger pieces. Out, and then make sure you just pull the meat right off the membrane. Very easy. It slides right off. And you can use whatever. As you see, I just used the peeler just to push that little piece of meat out. You want to get all of it. If you can crack these where the joints are, and twist it off, sometimes your meat will slide right out, and it makes it a lot easier. It doesn't always. It doesn't always. The spines on this one are quite sharp. They need to make a little glove, a kitchen glove for seafood, especially your food that likes to bite back. This is a bit messy and very fishy. I'll have to get out my good candles. Look at that. That's a good piece. That's good. You see how that is right there? That little dark spot? You just want to wash that. You just want to rinse it off. Always inspect your food. You know, the people at our restaurants and our little seafood places, they're human. I'm not perfect, so I don't expect them to be, so inspect your food. That one's a bit tough. can stop. Okay, now that we're back and I've gotten all my little crab there peeled apart, I'm going to take a medium-sized saucepan, medium-high heat, and then basically I'm going to add 1 box of small shell pasta, and you're just going to cook that the way the instructions say on the box. So we're going to let that boil. All right, now our broth here is getting warm. Once it starts to boil, you really smell that wine in there. That's going to be a good flavor. Okay, you can stop. Watch your fingers. Okay, now that our sauce is boiling, you're going to take your sea bass or whatever white fish you want to use. You drop that in the boiling liquid. Okay, that's going to cook for exactly 3 minutes, and it will be done. Stop. Okay, while we're waiting on our fish to cook, we're going to take a pretty good size skillet, a little bit of medium heat, a little bit of olive oil. Let that pan get hot, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take our squash and zucchini, and then we're going to saute those just until they get soft. And I'm also going to stop. Okay, after 3 minutes, you're going to use a slotted spoon or whatever, and you're going to take your fish right up. And you'll know it's done because it's white and it's firm. You don't want to cook it longer because then it's going to be rubbery. And we're going to put this right on top of the crab and the lobster because those are already done. They're already cooked. Just want to make sure I got all of that. Okay, now we're going to take our shrimp, drop those in. Okay, give those a little toss in the sauce. Make sure they're completely submerged down in there. Okay. And then again, 3 minutes. And they're done. When they're white and they're firm, they're done. Now, while that's going, our skillet for the vegetables is hot now. So I've taken 1 clove of garlic, and I'm gonna take our little vegetables here, our squash and zucchini, and we're gonna toss those right in that skillet with the olive oil. Okay, and we're gonna let those cook down a minute before I add the garlic, because I don't want the garlic to burn. And you're just gonna let those sit. And just until they saute, just enough to where they start getting soft. Our water for the pasta is boiling, so we're just going to go ahead and dump that in. We give it a little toss. All right. That you can stop. Okay, after 3 minutes, your shrimp is done. You see how white it is? That's exactly what you want. It's nice and white and it's firm. Any longer, it's going to get tough and chewy. Again, you don't want that. Now, we're gonna keep our sauce going because all of these, we're building this sauce up over here. And we're about to really build it up nicely. Make sure we get all of that seafood out. Give that a little toss. We'll give our veggies a little toss. Okay, now we're going to add to that 1/3 cup. Stop. All right, you're going to want 1/3 cups of tomato puree. And just dump that right in your sauce. From this point on, you're probably going to want to whisk. I'm going to give that a little toss. All right, let that sit for a minute until it's completely dissolved. All right, now these are, our vegetables are getting done, so we're going to take our garlic. We're going to dump that in. And I'm going to go ahead and turn that off because I just want the garlic to release its flavor. You don't really want it to burn or get too dark. Just kind of toss that around. And I'm going to give that a little bit of salt and pepper as well. Not a lot. Probably more on the pepper because we like pepper, but we try to cut out the extra salt. Burner's already off, and that pan is still plenty hot. So we're just gonna toss that around, get those flavors, and that's it. Okay, we're gonna turn our sauce down because it's a little bit. Okay, now over here in a bowl, I have 4 tablespoons of softened butter I've just left out. And I'm going to take a little bit of cornstarch. If you don't have cornstarch, you could use flour, but I like. We're going to go ahead and get that butter mashed up, and then I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And this is going to work like a thickening agent. Now I'm doing the butter. I'm mixing the cornstarch up in with the butter. It really helps ensure that you don't end up with lumps. The sauce that I'm making to go with this is very similar to making a roux. Now a roux, you would start with your butter and your flour, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it like this. It's a foolproof method of getting a thicker, creamier sauce without taking any chances on lumps. Nobody wants a lumpy sauce. Okay, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You just kind of want it to be incorporated pretty well. Okay, and I'm gonna use my finger to get all that. You really want all of it. Okay. And we're gonna take a spoon and we're gonna dump all of that right into this sauce. And this is gonna thicken up. All right, and you're gonna wanna stir like crazy. Just like you're making gravy. Stir it, stir it, stir it, stir it, stir it. No clumps, no lumps. By cooking this broth on such a high heat while you're cooking everything, it's reducing down, and that's what you want. And then you're gonna add your thickening agent, which is your cornstarch and your butter. And that's gonna make a really nice, thick, creamy sauce. Very rich. You get that flavor of the Chardonnay, then you get the flavor of the fish you cooked in there. You've really built this up to something really amazing. And that's really good. That's what you want. It's gonna start thickening up, just like a gravy. You don't want it too thick. So once you know, you want to scrape the sides and go across the bottom. Make sure you get all of the. Check our noodles, our pasta. You could use any pasta you want. In fact, I would have gone with something like rigatoni or tortellini or something like that. But we were out of town for the holidays, and I ran into the store to get a few things, but it was madness. So by the time I got home and realized I was low on pasta, all I had was a box of the ready-to-go stuff with a cheese pouch, so I just took the cheese pouch out and used the pasta from the box. So that's how we're rolling today. All right, that's thickening up really nicely, and I know that there's absolutely no lumps. I'm gonna leave that aside. We're gonna get our little strainer. Pardon my mess. This was a messy dish. All right, we are going to drain this pasta as it's done. Stop. Okay, now, once I've got the pasta drained, I'm gonna take some butter and a large baking dish. And I'm just gonna go around the dish. If you have spray, you could use spray. I don't buy the spray, I like butter. Butter's natural. You don't always know what is in the sprays. I really like to cook because I know what's going into my food. I would be lying if I said I never go out, but for the majority of the year, I cook almost every single meal from scratch, or, you know, I do home cooked meals. Mostly because I know what's going into my food. Okay, we're gonna put that in there. We're gonna take our pasta, dump that in. We're going to, I want the vegetables, but I don't really want all that oil. I'm just gonna get my little slotted spoon. Just kind of get the vegetables and the garlic. All right. Kind of give that a little toss. Now for the seafood. You're gonna dump that right in. Now this is where it gets messy again. I am going to use my hands and work that in. That way I know there is fish, there is shrimp, there is lobster, there is pasta, there is vegetables in every single bite. This is a really pricey dish. Probably around $90, but this is Christmas Eve. This is our little special dinner. Just a little bit lighter because we just came from huge holiday feast in East Texas, and tomorrow we're going to my family's Christmas Day dinner, and that is going to be incredibly heavy. So a lot of seafood is very light. Just tons and tons of protein. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I make my topping. And actually, I forgot. I'm gonna add some black olives in with this. You could add whatever you want. You could add artichokes to this. That would be wonderful. I love artichokes. Just kind of work them in there. That's fine. Okay, let me rinse my hands again. All right, and now we're gonna work on our topping. You can stop. Okay, now that we have our dish ready, we're gonna take our sauce that we made, and you're gonna pour that all over the top of that. Go slowly so it has time to seep all the way down. And you don't necessarily have to use all of it. You just want to make sure that, well, that did use all of it, but you just want to make enough so it goes all the way down and it coats all the sides. Now for my topping, I'm going to use 2 cups of plain panko breadcrumbs, and I'm going to 2 tablespoons of parsley, you could use fresh if you have it. Stop. All right, and you're gonna add 2 tablespoons of tarragon. Tarragon goes really good with fish or chicken. It's a really light, delicate flavor, but it makes a big difference. It's really good. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take about 6 tablespoons of melted butter and just dump that right in. And then just get a spoon or whatever you have handy and just kind of toss that around. All right, and I'm also going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. That's about 2/3 of a cup. And toss that in. You don't have to add a lot of salt or pepper to this. The parsley has a peppery flavor to it. And the Parmesan has quite a bit of salt in it. Okay, and you just want to make sure that it's all coated, and I just use my hands to feel. If you squish it and it kind of holds together like wet sand, you're good. That's all you want. That's good. Okay, we're just going to take that and sprinkle that all over the top. You just want one nice, even, smooth layer. Because as this bakes, it's going to turn into a little, nice little golden brown crust, and it's going to be really good. Gives it a little crunch. Okay, let me rinse my hands. Okay, we have our oven set to 400 degrees, and we're going to go ahead and pop in our dish here. On one side, and our biscuits on the other. Now, the seafood bake is going to take about 20 minutes. Your biscuits are going to take about 10 to 15 minutes, but you want to watch those very closely because they can burn they cook very quickly. That's it. Okay. The biscuits are done. They smell amazing. And you will know they're done. You just want to take one of the larger ones and just take your knife, go right through, and if it comes out clean, you know you're done. Now, these biscuits are incredibly light and fluffy, so you kind of want to just gently loosen them to make sure they're not going to stick. These are very tender, they're very fluffy, and they just fall apart in your mouth. They're totally amazing. Okay, those are done. Now, you will also know when your seafood bake is done, when everything is bubbling all the way through, and your panko topping is nice and golden brown. Your meats were already cooked, so you're basically just making sure that everything is hot and getting a golden crust on your panko. And that's it. That's a perfect holiday, not your traditional holiday meal, but just as effective.